Okay.
All right, hey guys, and for everyone who's watching, it's this is going to be like an internal demo, just something I've been working on for the past like couple of days. Just a quick background on the problem I'm trying to solve with config is that right. I think people are trying to if you look at how people are currently using especially setting secrets, right? Like there's one way where people do .env, right? They have that flow is just to me just very cumbersome, right? You should keep a .env folder locally, and when you need to deploy to production, first of all, you need to make sure you're not committing that
Hey, Frank. Maybe just back up and maybe just like based on like what somebody was saying in general, right? Like maybe just like
right.
talk about how you do it currently.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm describing, right?
Right,
Like
right, right.
it just yeah. First part, I just want to go over like how people are managing their secrets currently. One way is they use the .env, right? Make sure like all your testing secrets are in .env. Make sure the file is not committed. You might have some real credentials in there, and when you deploy, usually in the CI/CD, you are resetting every single secrets over there. So you're like exposing all your secrets to the CI provider, and hopefully they don't leak it. Right, that's the .env flow people should do. And if you are like slightly more advanced, you would use SSM, I think, or you could be using Terraform Vault or like any other like secret management software or service. With SSM, there are also a couple ways of doing it. A lot of people, what they do is in their SST app, they would make a AWS SDK call to SSM to load and decrypt the value at build time, and set those values into the like Lambda functions environment. Right, that right. Obviously, it's bad because it exposes the secrets in plain text in like CloudFormation, and it's also exposes secrets in Lambda console. Um, that is, but usually for a single person or like a small team, that could work. Uh, if you're slightly more advanced, you'd be like, okay, you usually can tell CloudFormations like, hey, reference this SSM value, but unfortunately, CloudFormation does not support uh, at deploy time resolving that SSM value um, for Lambda functions, right? I think it works for Docker and some other services, but it does not work for Lambda function. So to get around that, I've seen people they use SSM, but they don't use it as they don't keep that as a secret. They make they use SSM. They keep the secret as a plain text in SSM, so they can reference that directly in the ACDK and in CloudFormation. And there's the ultimate setup there where we kind of talk about in our docs, but we never help people like do this. Is you store them as secure string in SSM, but you're loading it in your application code. Um, and usually people are like, not. There are questions around like, oh, how do I decrypt them at runtime, right? Do I decrypt all at once? How do I know all my secrets I'm using in this Lambda function? And do I decrypt all at once, or do I decrypt one? Um, Almost like the like use memo thing, right? Decrypt it once, when I use it again, I don't decrypt it again. But then there's a problem of when you change the secret value, but those Lambda functions are still live, right? They're like, how do you restart the Lambda function to pick up the new secret values? So that I hope that goes over how people are managing their secrets currently.
Yeah.
Is there anything to add to that? Yeah. No. Um,
I think that's fine. Yeah.
okay, then I'll continue with what we are trying to solve with config. First of all, we are helping you to do last scenario I just went over. We help you load secrets in your code, and also in the type safe way where when you do process.env, a lot of people, or some people, they've brought it up. So, oh, how come my environment variable is not there? And it ended up being a typo, right? So that being type safe, I think, is pretty important, or like a good to have feature where you just auto completes your the name of the secrets. And when you change a secret value, we want to help you restart all the Lambda functions that are using a secret. And we also structured SSM so that, say, for a certain piece of secret, you could have that version per stage, per app per stage. So you're not just saving, hey, Stripe key. You're saving, oh, this is dev stage Stripe key, or this is a production stage Stripe key, right? So in your app, you're just dealing with Stripe key, but when we are saving it, it's stage specific. So that's, on the high level, that's what we are trying to do with config. Cool, I'll just jump right in. I'll share my screen. I'll go over, how we're using it. And now if you guys have questions, we can, poke into the code to see how we're doing that behind the scenes. Okay,
Did
let me
that
know.
just go missing?
Turn it down. All right. We'll go ahead. Okay. This is my, from the name you can tell, it's my playground. So I have, for the sake of this demo, I have 3 stacks. I have the a secret stack. Let's look at secrets first, right? We have a secret stack. What's in the secret stack? So I'm thinking of adding like the secret construct to SST. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just creating 2 constructs in the secret stack. A Stripe key, a Twilio key, and note that I'm not setting the value here, right? Because you don't want to put your value in your code. Ideally, you want to set that. You just want to define it here, so your app's aware that, hey, you're using the secret, and the value you can set that manually in SSM, or we provide like a tool for you to set it up. Hopefully, you can set up through the console, and I put in something where you can set it through the CLI. I'm going to show you in a bit. So pretty much over here, I'm just creating 2 secrets over here. And what I'm doing in my API is that you can see I'm using the secret stack. So these 2 secrets are passed over. And in my function declaration, you know how you guys usually do environment? Am I laggy when I'm typing?
No, that's good.
Okay. Right. This is what you used to do, right? This string is coming from somewhere, where either you decode it whether coming from your .env. If you have your .env, you do process.env Stripe key. Or if it's coming from, you could make a SSM SDK call prior to this to fetch the value, right? So that's how you usually do it. But over here, you just specify config, and the config you're passing over the Stripe key, right? So that's a bunch of things behind the scene. One of the things it does is that in your Lambda code, Lambda code, we have this node/config package. You import a config, and you do just config Stripe key. Okay, I swear this was working. This was working. I don't know why all of a sudden it's not working. It is supposed to. Sorry. Let me see you guys. It's supposed to auto config. This is the thing, Dax. We got it working last night, and all of a sudden it's working today. It's not working. So we figure out like a more robust way to do it behind the scene.
Yeah.
So I'll complete this. Yeah. Right. So this value, so this will be auto completed, and what is happening behind the scene is that I'm setting it here, and so my app's aware there's this thing called Stripe key, and then I would go into how would I set this Stripe key? It would be SST secret set Stripe key, and you pass in the value. Let's go get.
Whoops. Sorry.
Oh no.
Sorry.
Wait, we're good.
What happened?
No,
Hey, it looked like you. Yeah, it looked like you dropped out for a second, but then you came right back. So I don't know.
Okay. All right. So get Stripe key. I just set it like this, and you could also set Stripe key to SK test 1, 2, 3, 4, and that will take.
I'm gonna make that. I'm gonna hide us while you do this.
What's that?
Now our cameras were hiding that part of the screen, so just hit us.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Right. So what this call behind the scene, what it does is if I flip over to my AWS console, refresh, you could see this. Right. So that command, what it does is it created SSM parameter with /app name /stage name /SST secret underscore and then your secret name, and it's it's a secret string. If you click in, if you show the value, right, you can see this is what we just said. Right. If I just change the value, set it again. Refresh this page.
So what in that process makes it take so long?
I think it's my internet connection in that process. No, but I mean, I think my internet is pretty slow in this like phone booth. But
I also think that there's something with
like
it's slow for me in general too. I think all the credentials code that we pulled in, I feel like something in there takes a while.
Oh, like setting up the AWS credential.
Yeah.
Figure here. In this case, actually, we need the AWS credential, so we need to figure that part out. Yeah. I think in this case, we are also parsing for the names and configs and cleaning up the .build directory, and all those. I think some of those we can skip as well. Yeah. And you can also.
So this isn't running a synth, right?
This is not. No. Yeah.
So you can put in whatever here, even if it's not in.
I think that's one of my questions. I think yeah. I think I'll bring it up after at the end of the.
I think that's okay. I was just curious.
Yeah. You can also remove Stripe key, right? So what it does is if that. So when you do new secret, actually it doesn't do anything. It doesn't create any like AWS resources behind the scene. It's actually created through a CLI. But what it does is when you actually use it, we try to when we try to use a stripe key in a config, it sets the it sets a environment variable, so that's how we're able to figure out in your function code like what we can autocomplete, right? So we need to pass that information somehow to the Lambda code, and what we're doing that is by going to the Lambda. Right, you can see we're setting
Nice.
SST secret underscore stripe key, and this is just a like dummy value. It just sets to true, right? So we are pretty much, how we have two secret keys over here, like in our code. So we created two of these, and so we created two of these, and sorry. Okay, and then what we do is when we import this, we do we go through your process.env, look for other environments that starts with SST underscore secret, and we try to load all the values at the top level, so at top level await, right? So this is giving your function has to be using like the ESM format for the bundle. If using ESM, then this import is a top level await. It would look at all the secrets values and this is secret keys, and go fetch and decrypt each one from SSM. And after it decrypts that, you will set those values to config, so you could reference them like this. I think that's everything it's doing. Yeah.
How are you doing? You know how you were saying that if the values were to change, you somehow refresh it in the Lambda function? What was that about?
That part I haven't done yet. It's one of the questions I have. But essentially, how every time when you set the when you change the environment variable, let's say through the console, for example, your Lambda are getting redeployed, or like the Lambda are running are untouched, but for any new Lambdas, any new invocations, you would spin up like a new version with the new environment variables.
I see.
So what I'm planning to do there is, right, you would just update, create an environment variable called like secret hash or something, right? It just hashes your secret. So when the environment variable change, Lambda is going to restart all the idle containers.
Oh, so the guys that are running, that is untouched, but effectively anything new that starts, and I guess in this case you're saying, because I might be missing some details here, but you're saying for things that are going to have a warm start, those will be refreshed. Is that
a cold start?
Well, I mean, if it's a cold start, then it's like
no, just any new it's just like redeploying the Lambda effectively. We're like faking a redeployment. So the same thing that happens when you deploy will happen.
But why do we need to do that if you're fetching from SSM?
Because once a container boots, it's going to load all the SSM values and it's going to start serving requests. If you update any of those values, the container is not going to know to refresh from SSM.
Right, but then if it's a cold start, then it's refetching them, right?
Yeah, it will, but that means like it's kind of unpredictable when your system is going to update. Like you might have containers that stay up for an hour before they restart.
So
think-
then
yeah.
this is affecting the warm start then?
Or you just make sure there's no more warm start.
Yeah, it like
No
makes,
more warm start. Oh, okay. That makes sense. That's another way of putting it. Yeah. Okay.
and that's a question someone has asked. This will cause a cold start. Yeah, so this will cause every invocation or the next invocation set of invocations to have cold starts. There isn't a way to prevent that. Like, yeah, we can start pulling SSM from the containers, but you shouldn't be changing these environments too often. So I don't think it's not that big of a deal if it causes a cold start whenever you change it. It's effectively like doing a deployment.
Secrets. Secrets are supposed to be tied to to the deployment effectively.
Yeah, like an optimization we have. This is the downside with like supporting the CLI, right? If you allow people to do this in console, then they could update multiple secrets and then hit change. So because over here we are just like updating one by one.
Yeah.
And in 2 secrets, the Lambda is getting restarted twice.
Oh, I see. I mean, we can do it both ways, right? Like you can support both of them, and people effectively know that every time you make a change, it's going to do it's going to cause cold starts, I guess.
I actually misunderstood the comment. They were actually saying that that's a good thing because it's like a way to restart all your functions. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that makes sense. But I mean that is interesting. I guess we should, if that was something that people really wanted, and I can sort of see that, then that we might do that behind the scenes, but we'll probably call it something else, I guess.
I guess before we jump into other things, there's other piece, based on what we spec'd out before, is there's also this notion of parameter. Right, so there is the API stack. If you look at my index, there is the secret stack we just went over. There's the auth stack, there's the API stack. If you're using, it could be an auth stack, could be like a database stack, right? You're just passing some information to the API, and usually what you would do is you would use auth, and you would do environment. Oh my goodness, it's really slow.
I'm due.
When's yours getting here?
Mid-August, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a backlog.
Cool ID, right? You would do stuff like this, right? And right, this is, and then in your code you would be like process.m.userPool.id. You would have the user pool ID at runtime. This is the problem with this. This is not secret related at all. This is based on the conversation Dax and I have. This is more for like testing purposes, where if you're just setting environments like this, and if you say you have a Lambda function that uses process.m.pool ID, right? If a Lambda function that uses this, now if you need to test this Lambda function, or it might not be inside Lambda handler, it could be inside some common bit that a couple Lambda handlers share. When you do process.am.userPool ID, when you are testing, where does that environment variable come from? And we want to provide people a way. And also, there's another problem is you could have 2 Lambda functions. If you have 2 user pools, and you could have 2 Lambda functions, they both have an environment called user pool ID, but with different values in both. And so when you're unit testing this function or something, right, which value does it use? Jay, you see what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Right. So like a way to get around this is to so one is to be able to have a way to track all the environment variables you're using, so we could fake those values when you're testing, right? And also we make sure it's unique. So when you say user pool ID, it's always same user pool ID, right? So you better do user pool. If you have two user pools, your environment variable looks like user pool A ID and user pool B ID. So it's always unique. And when you're testing, it's very explicit, what you're trying to test. So to achieve that, we added this concept of a parameter. Right? So after you create the auth construct, you will create a parameter called user pool ID. The value is just auth.user pool ID, right? This is exactly what you would reference in your API stack normally, right? So instead of doing environment, you just use auth stack, and then so you have user pool ID parameter, and then you pass it to config. So config you could either take a secret or you can take a parameter. And when it's like this, you could just do config.user ID, and this is type safe, and you auto-complete it. So we kind of piggybacking like both secrets and parameter fit both into config. Like parameter really doesn't. It's like just a wrapper around like an environment, so that we can keep track of it and enforce uniqueness.
Yeah. One of the things I want to do, I think, Frank, after you're kind of done maybe sharing the screen, maybe we'll bring our heads back into the picture. But I think it is maybe worth, because we had this conversation once before, but we forgot to sort of stream it. But I think it might be worth going over, like, between you two. I think Dax primarily for the parameter part. Why is that useful, and why should you consider using it over something that already exists, which is like process.env, right? Again, we're just talking about parameters now, not secrets. And then finally, I think before we wrap up, maybe I'll take a couple of seconds to just like kind of try and summarize it, and then you guys can see if I'm summarizing it well, and I'm sure that would be helpful for some people. But
okay.
But yeah, I mean, again, like after you're done showing stuff on the screen, maybe.
I think the last thing I forgot to show is actually let's just invoke this function and see it in action, right? So if I go into my Lambda SST console, I'm going to invoke this function, and it's going to print out whatever is in the config. So you can see it's all decrypted value, right? Stripe key, token key, and full ID.
Nice.
This is coming from environment variable. These two things are decrypted and loaded from SSM. Of course, this by importing config, it adds a bit latency to the code start, because when a container boots up, we are fetching from SSM. The SSM call allows, like, you can fetch 10 at a time. So if you have a ton of these secrets, usually you shouldn't, right? Most of them you shouldn't have a lot of secrets. You could have a lot of parameters, but not secrets. But if you have a lot, so you'd be fetching them 10 at a batch. And
we handle that behind the scenes?
Yeah, of course.
The other part I was going to say, you could have a ton of these, secrets and parameters in your app, but then you don't necessarily have to, send everything to every single Lambda function, right?
Yeah. I mean, you could, in my secrets, right? You could list out like 20 different secrets, But what's going to get loaded is what you pass into the function. In this case, just stripe and tutorial key. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm done here. I think we can continue with,
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, Dax, if you bring us back. Yeah, Dax, do you mind maybe sharing a little bit? Because so to give folks some background, we've been thinking about this feature for a really long time. I think I don't know the exact timeline here, and this is maybe like what Dax can sort of share is you were trying to do something like this from almost the get-go. It almost seemed like you were anti-process.env. Right from the get-go, I feel like. And I think the drive on your side is interesting and sort of worth sharing, but it's also the other part where like it helped us kind of get clarity on like what are we trying to do here? Is it just secret management? Is it just like environment variables? Is it like parameters? And that obviously leads to sort of the naming. And so that I think we can like touch on. But maybe Dax, yeah, why would somebody use this over process.env? And again, when I say this, I mean specifically the parameter part.
Yeah, so I think my issue was that when I first started doing serverless, everything is geared towards just your code running in Lambda functions. And if your code is only ever running in a Lambda function, using process.env is fine. Like you can just pass in, like Frank showed, the user pool through the process env. And you can have any kind of abstractions underneath there. Like you can have your function calling into business logic, and that business logic can access process.env. And this all works, and this is great. But as soon as your code needs to run outside of a function, you don't have a system that's like, so when it's running in the function, you already have a system where CloudFormation will get the user pool ID and like place it into the runtime environment of process env. But if you're running it outside of a Lambda function, you need to figure out how to load those values yourself. So the question is like, why would you ever run it outside of a Lambda function? There actually aren't many good cases to do that, but I think the one good case is tests. As of now, like your tests still run probably locally or in your CI. So using the normal setup with process env, your code might depend on variables like user pool ID, table ID, queue, whatever. And to run your tests locally on like just pieces of logic, you need to make sure those are set. And that's kind of painful. Like then you have your options are like writing some code to like query CloudFormation, get the exports, inject them into process and in memory before starting the tests, and making sure like all the names line up and everything gets set properly. There's not really any great options. So I think what I realized was this specific way of using process env is actually its own category of thing. I try to think of it as like service discovery. So when your code is running, it needs a way to discover dependent services that it's using. So like a Dynamo table or a queue, like those are dependent services that your code needs, and how do you find them? So it made sense to think of that as like a first-class concept in your Sax code. I'm going to set up parameters that are going to store where all my different services are located, and I want to give my functions access to read them. But my tests can have access to read them as well, because they can just pull from SSM. So that's one nice thing. Just get your test running, and it's all using the same system. You're not doing anything special for your tests. Code that's written for your functions will just work because they're both using this SSM system for service discovery. The other thing that I've always found annoying, this was a side effect. I didn't like intend to want to fix this, but it is cool. I think most companies, when you join, an onboarding step is go ask someone at the company for their .env file so that you can actually run everything up. And that doesn't feel like that feels like a legacy workflow. If we're running everything in the cloud, why do you need some local state file that you're copying back and forth? We have the benefit of now of hosting effectively your .env file on AWS. So you can switch to another computer, you can like wipe everything locally and reset it. You're not gonna like lose this like magic .env file that just people share. And like, of course, there's like changes that are made to it, then everyone needs to update theirs. It's always been a clunky part of the workflow. And now, since you have this global concept of there is some configuration that my application needs, some of that is secrets, some of that are parameters for service discovery, and SST will figure out how to load it in all different places. So yeah, it's less that I think, like, I don't have any issue with process end. It's more that it's not that we set out to do environment variables. We set out to do secrets and service discovery, and process env was the only way to do that before. But it wasn't like innately made for that. So the idea here is like build something that's innately made for secrets and service discovery, and it probably will be better in a bunch of ways. So yeah, at this point, like I've been using this pattern for like maybe 6+ months now. I don't have a single environment variable in my whole code base. So it does like effectively replace it.
Yeah. Frank, anything to add to that? Any sort of like thoughts on how the setup is different?
Yeah, I was actually debating on, should we merge the idea of secret and parameter into this thing called config. I can't think of like a way to I can't think of another way to get around the testing issue that Dax mentioned. Right? I think in the past we've always just kept like a .env thing around. I think there are two problems, right? One is, how do we know all your environments, right? That we could get all your environment variables. That we could get around by somehow like fetching all your Lambda functions, pull out the environment variable for each Lambda function, merge them, right? I think the tricky thing is the right, what if there are multiple environment names with different values? Which one do you pick? Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a good solution. So I think this is. I still think without parameter, the secrets, it's like a solid thing where there's like no question asked. It's people should want us for sure. Like parameter, it's how much pain do you actually feel about doing the .env way versus this, right? I do prefer this. I feel it's improving something where the secret thing it's
like inventing something.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why it took us a little bit to come up with a design that made sense. So let me try and go ahead.
At one point, I think we are slowly shifting towards thinking of SST as an app, like a framework. Like these parameters and secrets are app level things, right? They're no longer like a function level or a stack level, right? This is an app level thing, right? Mm-hmm. In your app, you shouldn't have two environment variables for different piece of code, both called table name but with different value, right? That doesn't make sense. So I think we are moving towards that.
Yeah. Let me try and summarize this, and then and you guys like point out, if I haven't gotten it right. So we're introducing this. Fundamentally, we're introducing this thing called config that you can set for any of your Lambda functions. The config is similar to sort of environment variables, but it's a little bit more tightly integrated. And we'll look at that in a second. But the config then takes two types of things. It takes secrets and it takes parameters. Secrets, most people should be familiar with. These are things that you set and are explicitly not stored in code. Typically, and ideally, you don't even want it stored on your local computer. And then parameters are basically like environment variables, but by defining them sort of centrally, we're able to do, I guess, two things. We're able to keep track of all the parameters and secrets your app needs, and we're sort of giving you, I guess, type safety and autocomplete in your Lambda functions for these things. But because now the app has knowledge of all the secrets and parameters that your Lambda functions need, it is able to bring them up as your Lambda function boots up. And I guess it knows more clearly like which specific one it's looking for. So you don't have the problem of multiple environment variables sort of having the same name but different values across Lambda functions. I guess the one way I can kind of think about it weirdly is if you were to just use process.env, it's sort of up to you in terms of making sure that you have these things named and managed properly. There's a very loose sort of connection between where they're sort of defined and how they're sort of used. Whereas with this, your app is now aware of exactly what is being used. And if you end up going the route of moving away completely from process.env or environment variables the way they are currently, you'll end up with a nice scenario that, when you onboard new people onto the team, they are up and ready to go. There's literally nothing that is tied to their local machine that needs to be set up aside from obviously the AWS control. That roughly sort of cover it? That makes sense?
Yeah.
I think maybe worth sort of pointing out that, right, that they are like almost these two separate concepts that we're introducing here, secrets and parameters. Secrets is sort of an SST native implementation of secrets. We've never had that to date. Parameters is, again, sort of like piggybacking on that concept, but allowing you to like tightly couple, I guess, your Lambda function code with these environment variables that you're setting. Up front, you don't need to adopt the parameters piece. You can continue doing the process.env if you want to. But it's kind of like what Dax and Frank are sort of pointing out is that like over time, you might realize that it just makes sense to manage these things centrally, especially as your app grows.
I think Bruce Lee just had a question of, right, the downside of using this for tests is that it will increase the cost of continuous delivery. Pretty much, right? When you're running tests in your CI, you're fetching from parameter store for every test suite run. Yeah, I think first of all, I think SSM, we're just looking it up. I think SSM is free if you're using the standard service. I think they have this advanced thing where they call it advanced tier, where they offer higher throughput. You can store longer secret values, and but the standard usage is free. But also, I think to address the testing, we could do something like the SST inv, where we wrap around the test command to load everything up once, so each test don't reload them.
So there's a question in the comments. If we're loading the config values from SSM, does that mean you're going to pull it for every test? So the way Jest and vtest and all these different test runners work is they'll have different, they're effectively like workers, like little child processes. They spin up maybe like, if you have like a 16 core computer, they might spin up 8 or something. So it'll, at worst, it'll fetch from SSM. If you're running 8 runners, it'll fetch from SSM 8 times. It won't do it once per test. It'll fetch it all at the beginning because of that top level of weight, and every test will just reuse it. So you shouldn't really see much of an impact on your CI or even local testing. There's going to be like a slight initial delay because we're talking SSM. It's probably going to be what, like a couple hundred milliseconds. Shouldn't really be that noticeable. And from there, it should just work the way it normally does.
By the way, do you guys have a ballpark sense of the added cold start as a result of sort of using this?
Yeah, it depends on the number of SSM parameters. I've seen like a couple hundred, like 100-200 milliseconds if you have more than one page.
So more than 10, that is?
Is 10 the limit? Yeah.
If it's under 10, how much is it?
I think it could be sub 100 milliseconds. So it is like, that is the main cost you pay. Yeah, but ultimately, if you, like, even ignoring the parameter thing, if you have secrets, like this is kind of the only way I know of to really do it. I've seen some people. I've seen some people. I don't know. This didn't make sense to me, but I guess someone did it and it made sense. So maybe I'm missing something, but someone built like a Rust Lambda extension that like loads the secrets before your Lambda function starts, which would be cool, except now you have to ship a Rust binary, which is going to slow down your cold starts even more. So I don't really get the purpose of that.
Wait, you're saying, and by fetching it in Rust before your Lambda function starts, that doesn't affect your cold start? Is that what you're saying?
I didn't get it. My summary is I didn't understand.
Okay, right. That is
remember
interesting.
the trick where if you put the stuff outside the handler, you're not getting charged.
Time-wise, like
Remember
cost-wise.
Yeah, something like that.
Controversial article, not a funny article saying you could save 99.8 or what 98% of the cost.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think you can charge up to certain MS.
Yeah, so I see this article about this. Preload SM parameter to secure environment variables. It's kind of doing what we do. You can like pass in environment variables that point to SM values and it'll load them. But it requires a Lambda layer. So I don't get, I guess the benefit is it just shows up in your process env. So it's like there's nothing special about it.
Well, interesting.
But now you're shipping like a layer that's going to just slow down your cold starts even worse than what we're doing probably. Yeah,
I mean, to be honest, I think the service discovery part of it is like, is probably the bigger value add over time for something like this. Yeah. So I don't, like process, like, if you sort of added like type safety there, that makes some sense, but I can see this system being like really useful in terms of just cataloging everything your application has access to or needs to know about.
All right, I have a couple questions. Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay, should we list? Okay, first of all, we don't have a SST secrets list. command, right? But if we did, should we list all the secrets for the deploy code, or for the version that you're having locally, right? Like for example, imagine I deployed an app and now I'm working on it. I added Stripe key. Right, so the deploy app doesn't have Stripe key as a secret, right? But my local app has. I'm working on it, but there's a need for me to set secrets based on my local version of the code, because like you kind of want to set the secrets before you deploy. You shouldn't be like, okay, I should prefix by saying that when you run SST secrets set, if you put in a gibberish secret name, we should tell you, hey, we are not using that secret. That secret doesn't exist. I think that's a good feature.
I was actually going to disagree, because that requires us to like parse all of your stacks code and everything, and that just puts you in situations where like you've maybe updated stuff in dev and removed the secret, but then something went wrong in production, you need to replace the secret, and you go to try to do it and it doesn't let you because your current version of the stacks code does not have that, or is it pulled from the metadata?
Yeah.
Like, how do you know the secret exists?
Yeah, pulling from metadata. Right? Like for the deploy version, pulling from metadata data. For local version, you have to build it. That's right. Both are slow.
I think I care more about this command being fast and catching errors. Especially if I have like 5 secrets to set,
right,
which you usually do when you're like deploying a new app.
Right. So what Dax's point is, like, on one extreme, right? You don't look at anything. You don't look at your current app. You don't look at the current deployed app. You can set whatever you want. Where if you take the other extreme, you would kind of look something like this table, right? I have 3. When you do, say, SST secrets list, as Stripe key, my key, your key, 3 keys, right? You should say Stripe key, it's set. It's used in your local app. It's used in the deployed app. We know it's from deployed app because we can pull from the construct metadata. We know it's in your local app because we built it already, which is super slow, just to be able to pull up your secrets. And my key is that, it's not being set. You should go set it because you're using it for a local code, but not using it for a deployed code. That's the other case.
Maybe I'm not understanding
this table. Yeah,
I didn't expect anything like this at all. I kind of just thought secrets list would just list everything that's set for the stage and the app in AWS.
Yeah, but I thought, if I'm working on it and I'm using like a Stripe key, I haven't set the value yet, but I don't remember. Ideally, I would want to run your secrets list, like, hey, you are using Stripe key, but it's not being set.
Yeah, that is a nice feature, but that's not going to, I mean, what we were saying earlier is I'm getting ready to deploy something with the new secret. Doing SC secrets list won't show it because it's not deployed yet.
I mean, no, I think what I was saying before is the most comprehensive way is we look up your metadata and we build a local version, so we know, all the cases.
I see. You build a local version also. Yeah.
Just like real quick, for example, this is the current experience. If I remove my Stripe key.
The thing with that though is, like, think about this workflow. I am currently on the master branch. There's a PR by mastering whatever's I'm on the production branch. There's a PR open for a new feature that uses a new secret. I know that before I merge it, I have to set the secret. For this feature to work, I would have to check out that branch first and set the secret under that branch, and then merge the PR and then switch back to my production branch. So I think my overall thinking is this feature is complicated and I don't care that much about it. At least right now. Maybe I'll find that I suddenly want it, but I'm not like that excited about having this.
Right. Yeah, I think you technically would know that you have a missing secret because this is the lambda gonna error. It's just the following secrets were not found.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was good to not just put it in process end, because we can intercept that and throw that error. So you at least get some kind of clear alert.
Yeah, I think. Gee, what do you think? Because I think what Dak said makes sense, right? Like otherwise, we don't have any other options, right? Like building your app, it's like way too long. We could hack around it, right? If you run this command, we don't have to build, static side or function. We just do the minimal, but that's still going to take time. Or if you could do some static code analysis, pull out your secrets, but that seems like a lot of work for little value.
Yeah, I kind of put this in the category of if we made synthesizing 100 times cheaper, this would be something we would definitely do. And there are ways to do that. So I would just say, okay, we're not going to do this until we make synthesizing take almost no time.
I can see that. Yeah, I think for now, if we don't have a good sort of solution, like a good performing solution, I think we should go with the dummy predictable one, which is pretty much just this command is effectively just letting you set SSM secrets, right?
Okay.
It doesn't have that much to actually do with your local code or. I like that Frank brought his Notion to the stream. Frank is a pro Notion user.
All right. Okay, so my next question is kind of related. I guess it doesn't stand now. I was thinking to be able to figure out, all the secrets you're currently using, and to be able to detect, right, you're setting something wrong, right? We need to be able to we need like a quick way to figure out all your secrets, and we might need some state for that, like app level state. So that does not apply now. Okay, fallback. Do we want to implement fallback right now? And my arguments are two, not really one. One is if we do, what is the command going to look like in the CLI? I think
you could pass stage as an option to the CLI, right?
What's that? Yeah,
the CLI takes stage, right? So
yeah.
Does that solve that?
What do you mean, like?
If my fallback, if I have a dev stage, that's the fallback. If I just do SD secret set -- stage dev.
But that would just set the secret for the dev stage, right? But how's that related to fallback?
Are you saying it falls back to that stage?
It would fall back to that stage, or whatever stage it falls back to. You would just pass that as -- stage.
I see.
Unless you were thinking about implementing fallback in a different way.
I think Yeah, kind of similar to what you said last time. We were thinking about.
Or is Frank, are you saying that like we haven't implemented, we were thinking about it still, kind of thing? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
like I
Okay.
think basically what we said last time is, as a SAM, we're going to have this dollar default.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So my issue is, it's like I don't know enough about like people's like real usage, right? For like slightly larger teams, would they want to keep all their default secrets in this one account? And so what we've been talking about here is like falling back to another SSM value within the same account.
Oh.
Like, yeah, I'm actually not sure about. I don't know enough about this.
So what does the
Right,
workflow look like? Say I was adding like the stripe key, like it's a new secret. I added to the stage that I'm working on, and I added to the default.
You would not add it to the stage you're working. So to me, this works best when you have shared accounts for some things. So if you have a single dev account for everyone's personal stage, you would just one time set app default stripe key, and none of the developers would ever have to think about this because it would just pop up because they're deploying
Sorry,
the same
what
account.
is app default stripe key? Default is like a
it's not
right.
If your personal stage doesn't have stripe key, it'll pull it from the default.
Look at that. Okay.
That's for all the developers sharing the same AWS account, right?
Which is effectively just like, because they're all sharing the same AWS account, all we're doing is like we're just looking up the default version of the stripe key.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And if it's not there, obviously, there's no default.
Which works perfectly for people's PR flow. Usually, all the PR gets deployed to the same account. Right?
Wait, so just really quickly, so how are you setting it again initially? So let's say like I'm creating the stripe key for the first time. What do I do?
I mean, we don't have.
That's what this bullet is. We'd have to. I mean, right now you can probably just do -- stage $ default, and that would work.
I see. But wait, then what is the proposed way? Like, what would be, I guess, the proposed way of setting the dollar default?
No, just something like more first class, like -- default or something.
Yeah. That's a bit weird. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that should be okay. I mean, if you look at the CI output, it would just be set, or you could be, set default or something, right?
I see. Why don't we set the default when we're setting this for the first time?
We could, but I think that should be an explicit action, right?
I mean, the fallback isn't explicit, right? It falls back automatically.
I mean, for example, when you run secrets get stripe key, it printed this, or it could be printed this bracket like inherited from default or something, right? So like very explicitly to users, like this is not being set, but you're okay because there's a default value we found.
So I think another thing we can throw in here is a way to download all the secrets and upload all the secrets, because that can help. If people really have multiple accounts, you can like
go from one to the other.
Yeah, you can like copy from. It's not like amazing, and that's why at one point I did do the workflow of everyone gets their own personal account, but as soon as you have like one shared resource, it becomes like 100 times worse. So I think for medium to large size teams, like the best setup is still a single like dev account for all developers, and then a single like PR account for all their PRs, and then one prod account. And that'll work nicely with this. So, but yeah, like Frank said, I don't know how common that is. I suspect it actually is pretty common, because going to the extreme of having an individual account per per developer, like you already know AWS pretty well to know that that's even a pattern you can do. So I'm kind of like, how much do we care about helping that group of people that have made like a very advanced choice?
By the way, this is what we have been recommending in our docs.
Where?
Which
one account per developer.
Oh, per developer.
I think I wrote that, right? I thought I laid out like the full spectrum.
I think we have another doc. Remember, I wrote that one. but yeah,
The working with your team thing, right?
Yeah. You wrote that?
Look, we have single AWS account. We have an AWS account per environment, and then we have AWS account per environment and developer.
I'm pretty sure I edited that doc.
Yeah, so I think I initially wrote it. The benefits are, I mean, and there's cons. Added complexity of managing multiple AWS accounts. Cannot share dev resources easily. For example, a seeded database for development, or shared configuration values now.
Right. Well, so the default one. So Frank, walk me through this again. So you haven't implemented it yet, and the fallback. You haven't implemented it yet, and the question you're asking is, should we implement it, and is that how we want to implement it? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. I'm not. I'm not sure. Do people? I'm making this up, right? Do people just like to keep all their secrets for testing stage, for production, for staging all the different environments in this one AWS account? And so that means that the secret default scheme need to handle cross account.
Here, my argument right now is if we don't implement any kind of default, it is impossible to implement any kind of PR workflow. Is that true?
Yeah. No, we can provide that out of the box. What they would do is for the PR workflow, they would make a bunch of SSM calls to, or we can have a CLI that does this.
So they would put in the environment variables into their CI environment, and that would then run a script that sets all. I would consider that like impossible, because then there's no point in using all of this, because you still have to upload your secrets into two places.
No, I mean like this. Let's say we had like a copy command where they would just copy, say, everything from source stage to target stage. So the workflow is...
but then what happens when... I guess that works. The issue is keeping stuff in sync. Then if you go update the Stripe key, all your environments are broken.
Yeah.
Until I guess you run the build again for each of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of feel like if we want to support, I kind of feel like we have to do this, because otherwise this is like worse overall, because then your PR build process gets like a lot more complicated.
Yeah, if we want to do this, is just walk through what the steps look like, because it doesn't make sense. I mean, default, I guess, you should probably have like a default flag, I guess, but yeah.
And no, I think if you think from the perspective of like what the docs will look like, when people read the docs, would be, you can set a default for secret, know that the default only applies to stages deployed to this AWS account. Like,
right.
Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense if you know AWS, right? But if people...
Again, but like if you know AWS and you're doing multi account, you're like pretty advanced to be able to bring that up to us, right?
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
I think this is a thing that we can layer on later to fix.
Okay.
Yeah, but we should know what the sort of baseline level is. Yeah. Wait, I guess I'm okay. If we are saying that, I'm sort of stuck on why I have to set the default separately. why can't?
Separately from what? You only have to set the default once.
No, but if I'm setting the value once, why am I setting the default again? Why isn't that the default?
You wouldn't do
Like
both. You would just
first.
set the default.
No,
So
No,
basically,
that's
you sign up
just
for
set the
Stripe, you copy the
Yeah.
Stripe key, and you set the default once.
and then
And you never set it again for anything.
oh,
No developer
interesting.
sets it again. No PR stage sets it again. You have to set it again for production because it's a different key.
DJ, you're thinking from a developer perspective, where that is thinking from a manager perspective. Okay.
Wait, so is the command just called set then, or is it called set default?
Set -- default. I don't know what the CLI should be, but
Wait, why do we just walking it through here? Why do I need a set hyphen default? Why
okay.
isn't it just
So
set?
because sometimes you might be. So the default is a fallback.
Okay. Yep.
So it's a fallback value. So you need to set what the fallback value is. Then for each stage, it doesn't need anything set. It'll just use a fallback value. But
Right.
technically, you can set a value for just the stage. Because so for the example of
Wait a minute. then why isn't the workflow look like this? I get the Stripe key, I go set Stripe key, right? And then let's say like I have like, feature A in the same account, a stage, and I go set Stripe key hyphen stage feature A.
yeah, you can do that. But now if you're CI, now you have to do that every time you make a new branch.
Well, if I need to override it, right?
No. Oh, okay. I see what Jay's saying. Jay's saying set should always set default.
Yeah.
And if you want to set for a specific stage, you do dash stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree.
No, I think I like that way, but the problem is
You're more
even
likely
when
to be setting it for a stage than the defaults.
no, actually, I think you're likely to set the default than the state.
Yeah, see, that's
Wait,
I thought that's what you guys were trying to explain.
Either way, the
Okay,
problem
okay,
is when you set default, you still need to use a credential, and that comes from. Actually, no. I guess. Okay, no, that's different. Our credential is not tied to a stage. Oh man, I'm so embarrassed when people watch this stream. I don't even know. Right? Okay. So credential is different, right? You could just AWS underscore profile.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if we were to just ignore the multi-account scenario just for a second, right? I feel like exactly what Dax is describing, I feel like the workflow should actually be like that. Like the stage is a secondary thing. You just always set the secret. Does that make sense, you guys?
Seriously, I thought that's what Dax was trying to say. Like you should.
Yeah, it
set
was.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, yeah, the set command sets it for the default, right? And if you want to set it for a stage, you have to pass in hyphen stage.
No, that does not comply with our normal CLI commands, right? Usually.
Yeah, that's the issue. It defaults to your personal stage.
Right. So say that again. Yeah. Walk it through, Frank. What is it?
Like all of our CLI commands, like 90% of them.
Yep.
They all take a stage, and that stage is the one coming from your .sst stage. Right?
Yep.
So usually people assume if you run secret set,
then it's using that one. Yeah. No, this is right. Then we should not do hyphen stage equals default, because what is default? right? Like that's like a made up stage.
Yeah,
right?
that for sure. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it could be like the set command can have a hyphen default option, but it can't be like
Or
it
the
can't,
yeah.
or the command itself is called set hyphen default, which I don't like, but
Okay,
I
I'm
think
just
set looks better.
list out of the
Frank, scroll up your page a little bit because it's being blocked by
um, this is gonna make the yards thing really confusing.
Or -- stage equals $default.
That is not allowed.
Also, like the default, should we enforce it to be like this, or I think enforce this is better. This is more opinionated. I was thinking if we don't assume this $default, where we let you specify
What the prefix or whatever is or something.
I think that our initial version was you would pass.
Oh yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I actually like $default better. I was thinking this way, it would be easier later on if you do a cross account, but I don't think we should consider that scenario for this.
Yeah, I think the cross account way, yeah, it might just be like, yeah, we sort of help you run a script that grabs everything and puts it up onto a new thing easily. Anyway, we can look at it later, I feel.
Yeah, or that could be like a seed side feature.
Yeah, I can see that. That is true. That is actually tied a little bit more closely to sort of environments being managed sort of centrally. So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so you can set it up once in seed, and that can replicate to all your environments.
Ooh. I like number 1, then number 4, then number 2, and then number 3.
You like number 1?
4, 1, 4, 2, and 3 in that order. 1, 4, 2, 3.
I like 3, 2, 4, 1.
Wait, what?
I'm just kidding.
So 3 is terrible. 3. Now we have to go explain to people what $default.
Well, 3 is actually going to work. You can't stop 3 from working.
That is true. That is unfortunate. Yeah.
The check that you cannot have $.
Yeah. You can go do that.
No, literally, we are checking, I think. Or if you're not, we should check. So it doesn't.
Right. So it doesn't. Yeah. That's for sure. Yeah.
No, you fail because CDK inconsistently has ID checks for random resources. So when you fail some resource.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Well, because some resources are allowed to have $signs in their.
That's true.
Their name. Like I ran into this recently. I forgot what it was.
API gateway. You could you can have anything in the name. Yeah.
I think I like 1, and I don't like anything else. The rest are tied.
Easy.
Do we think of it as a default or a fallback? That's the other question I have.
Oh, that's a good point.
default because I mean, by Dak's argument, right? You should just need a default.
Yeah.
Or you should set the default first.
That wasn't my argument. I was just explaining what Jay was saying.
Yeah, it is a good point. Fallback sounds because so again, we could use ignore the PR workflow just for a second, but you could like literally use all of our secret stuff without ever touching this default command, right?
Yep.
So maybe it should be called fallback.
No, it should be.
Frank, that's like a 15-second lag of like processing, and it's like, go.
CLI will be secondary. Like it will probably be the console, right? Like this thing will get a console interface for sure,
but even then, right? Like if you're just if like the basic behavior is like, hey, you get the stripe key, I just go set the stripe key, and it's like, I mean, this depends on how you do it in the console UI, but if it's just like just thinking about the simple concept of like, I just want to set the secret, right? Then I don't have to think about the fallback. You think about the fallback if you're now thinking about like PR workflows and stuff. It's like, hey, if I'm going to have a PR, I automatically want it to like pick up the secrets from this account. So I should go set the defaults, I guess, or the fallbacks.
What about global?
Honestly, this is making me think of like, why aren't you setting the default or global the first time it gets set?
Yeah.
Is there a downside to that?
You guys are really good at making a point of, and then you guys will switch your mind.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
we should all be lawyers instead of engineers.
Wait, so why don't you just set it though? Why don't you just set the
I
default?
agree
right?
that
What's
for
wrong
the
with
most part, when you have a secret, you're probably going to set it globally.
Yeah.
Or defaultly or fallbackly.
Right.
But something about that not being explicit feels weird to me.
Yeah. No, that I'm always like don't
The
agree.
magic
When we'll set something for a stage, he also says the default, right? That's.
I get that. Yeah, I kind of.
I think the other thing is we've trained everyone to think in terms of stage.
Right.
Everything I do is scope to a stage, scope to an app, scope to a stage.
I think that's a fair argument. Yeah.
So this is one of the first things that breaks out of that.
Yeah.
Then we should call it fallback, because we train people to think of in terms of stage. Now, what is default? Is default is the magical thing where
that's fair.
Inherit from. Fallback is like, just in case you forgot to set it for your stage, it still works because there's a fallback.
Yeah. And global is like, what is a global stage? That might be a bit weird, I guess.
Yeah, it's not so global because
it's not truly global. Yeah.
Yeah.
We might actually end up having like a true global later.
If we have seed, yeah. That would actually be global because that would be true always. Whereas this is still scoped to your account.
Yeah.
Yeah, I vote for fallback as well. I was asking genuinely because I've been using the word fallback everywhere, so I'm just kind of biased because I'm used to that. But that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. My last question. Right now I have like secret construct and parameter construct. I feel weird having two constructs, or maybe not. And what do you guys feel about new config.secret and new config.
I like that better. Because I was going to say earlier that it's actually weird that we have 3 seemingly equal level concepts where it's like you have secrets, you have parameters, and then randomly it seems like we have config. And there's no like clear tie that between secrets, parameters, and config. This at least creates a proper hierarchy. We have the concept of config, shows up in your application as config, and config values can be secrets or parameters. So I like that first option.
If you just flip to the code really quickly, Frank, where does the word config actually show up? Like, what are the places it shows up right now?
It does not show up in the resources. Right?
It shows up in the function.
It just shows up on the function, right? And then it shows up, I guess, in the resources in the sense that the function takes a config, but it's like lowercase config. But
the function
sure,
it shows up in the function config. That's actually what I meant. The config
right,
field on the props.
Oh yeah, okay. But then, so if you were to like package this, then what would it look like? Like in your resources code, you're doing an import on config.
Yeah.
Right. But then in your Lambda code, you're doing an import on config.
Yep.
Different package.
But they're a different package.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that is weird?
I like it. Ideally, it should be one-to-one map. If you're using a construct in resources, then that should be a helper in.
Yeah, I guess it's just, I'm just like throwing this out there. I do like it. I'm throwing it out there in the sense that like, if I just like randomly see some code and I see config in there, and let's say it was like Lambda function code and it was like pulling up a config value, I wonder if somebody like would go and try and do that in their resources code. Because you've seen a code snippet somewhere, you know? Does that bother you guys? I guess like the editor will catch it, like there's no such thing. So it should be fine, but.
Hang on.
Dak is going to change his mind as he comes. And then.
What's the question? Sorry, I got distracted.
So say for example, like you're kind of newish to SST, you come across a code snippet that is on the Lambda function side that is config.stripe key, right? That's how you pull it up, right? And then let's imagine you're working on your stacks like resources code and you kind of like try and type that out effectively, right? That won't work, right? And does that bother you guys? That like, because again, they're like 2 different packages. And
you know, technically, it could work.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean it'll work?
Oh, you don't
import the wrong package?
No, I'm saying you could technically
support config.stripe key on both sides.
Yeah. No/config. If you have the right environment variable set, that guy is going to be able to pull from SSM, right? But in your stacks code, you could technically import.
I don't get it. So if you import the wrong package in your stacks code, is what we're talking about?
No, you import the right packages. It's just config.stripe key works in your Lambda function code, but doesn't work.
I would be worried about the developer. He might have. Sounds like David suffered a head injury.
Yeah. This is the off chance of like you've seen a snippet somewhere that says config.stripe key, and you go try and do that in your like resources code, but they're not the same package. Again, like I'm not saying that
if you're using TypeScript, you get a TypeScript error. So
yeah, that's sort of what I was saying too. It's like I guess the editor sort of catches it, but then Frank is like, we could support it.
If he actually imported the wrong package.
Right. Okay. Now it's different, right? Which I think is good. Well, sorry, what is the package called right now?
I'm switching it to Lambda, but we can talk about that.
Yeah, no. I like even the config one would fall under that.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, Lambda is like pretty clear, right? Like, why would I go put that in my stacks code?
Because you had a head injury.
Do we?
Yeah.
Now we don't have this node package anymore, right? Everything.
I'm renaming the node package to Lambda. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's on my. Hey, Dax, for this, I need to use the symbol thing you had in there, right? To do this.
No, you don't need to use a symbol. Just make the two classes, but don't export the class. Export an object.
Okay.
Export const object with the secret and the parameter.
Got it. Okay. All right. I think I've got everything.
Yeah, no, I actually like the config.parameter because effectively that's what we're trying to tell, right? Like when this thing gets launched in the launch event, that's what we're going to talk about. It's like, here's this thing called config. It takes secrets, it takes parameters. Here's how you set it in your function code. Here's how you set it in your CLI or in the console. And then here's how you consume it in your Lambda function. By the way, are we doing, so for the launch, are we doing the console as well, or are we going to do the console after?
I don't think we're doing the console.
Okay. We don't need the console.
Oh, Frank, quick question. When you add it to the function, it grants permission, right?
Yeah. Of course. Kidding me, like
Frank is personally insulted.
No, but there are a couple other things that
you.
are kind of annoying to handle, right? When you remove, when you do SST remove, you have to go clean up all the secrets. That makes sense, right? Yes.
All the secrets, yeah, not the parameters.
Well, and parameters too, right?
You don't have to manually clean up the parameters.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Oh wait, then would this be like a leaking thing where, I guess you would just, if you keep changing the name of your parameters, and you would just have a bunch of like orphan parameters. I guess
not secrets. Parameters are controlled by CloudFormation, right? Fully controlled by CloudFormation. So
no.
We're talking about the other parameter, not config.parameter.
What's the other
parameter? Talking about config.parameter. No, currently I'm still putting them in here, so that's how you would load the value in the.
Yeah, I know.
Right. So no. This is environment. Sorry. No, in the sorry, even in the. Oh my. This is.
Whoa!
This happens. This happens sometimes. I can't believe this happens.
Have they considered using serverless?
I think you're still gonna get the error. Maybe not.
They're using Java. Is that does that explain a few things?
Actually, the real problem is their front end. Did you see they released the component library for the console?
Why would you do that?
Hey guys, we're live.
I know, that's why I'm saying it. I want one audience member to hear this.
Oh my god, this is similar to like the it's like they're interviewing Shaq. He's like, "Hey Shaq, we're live." It's like, I don't give a shit. So does remove the default?
No,
it won't.
No.
So
hang
does
on.
That mean the
remove SST remove by default? Okay, I'm not gonna use the word default. We're using the word fallback for the other thing, so let's get that straight. SST remove will only clean up your parameters. It won't clean up your secrets.
Why not?
Because there's nothing in your CloudFormation state that's pointing to the secret, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no! I mean that we would need to.
He's proposing that he's going to go do that. Yeah.
That doesn't. Oh. I mean.
Oh no! Wait, you're right. We don't need to manually clean up parameters because.
Yeah.
CloudFormation
will remove them.
But I would need to clean up secrets manually, right?
Do you have to?
Isn't it weird? You removed the stage already, right?
Yeah, but if I'm removing the stage because I messed it up and I'm redeploying it, it's kind of nice that you didn't remove the secrets.
I like it.
No,
You
yeah, I
make
think,
a very sound argument for being lazy.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think we should clean it up, right? I mean, ideally, it's like if I clean up everything, your account should go back to 0, right?
Well, then this would need to be a custom resource that does that, right?
No, I was thinking we should kind of do it consistently. If we're doing it in CLI, this should be handled through like core, where after we remove CloudFormation and everything, I would go.
That doesn't feel right, because what if the stack with your secrets succeeded to get removed, but then another stack failed to get removed? And then you go in and just, you see what I'm saying? Like I think you're trying to, I think we should, if we are going to do this, we should try to emulate CloudFormation behavior.
Oh.
If you go into the UI and delete a CloudFormation stack, the secrets should get cleaned up, right? My vote is not to clean it up at all, but
I mean, this is kind of interesting because if you think about setting sort of secrets through our command, it's almost like they're a little bit separate from the actual stage that's been deployed. So when you take it down, right, like when you set it up, it's not like it set it up, right? You had to do it. When you take it down, you have to take it down. I can kind of see that argument. Does that make sense to you guys? It's like, like the setting up and taking down is like a similar workflow. Like, why are you, I guess, taking it down while setting it up, you didn't set it up?
Yeah, I guess, that argument would make sense if we're also creating it creating it, but we can't. CloudFormation cannot create a secret SSM.
Yeah, there's also there's also this like argument to be made, and we should probably point this out in the docs. It's like this is a thing that like lives outside, like by design. I think it has to live outside of like your app in some ways. So it makes sense that it's not truly deployed with your app because they have to be like set up separately.
Another thing.
So if it's not deployed with your app, then why should it get cleaned up when it gets removed?
Yeah. No, that is the argument here. Yeah.
What's that? Say it again.
Yeah, no, he's saying why if you're not setting it up with your app, why should it get cleaned up when you're removing it? Yeah, you shouldn't. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Nice.
What about
trying to make less work for you?
Yeah, what about the default? So like same thing, I guess. Oh, sorry, fallback.
Yeah, we can't remove the fallback automatically.
Then we should add a command
to remove them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That makes sense.
And what is remove all doing? Like just like everything in this account?
No, prefix scan the app and the stage, and it'll remove everything under that.
But
again,
not the fallback.
That's like a nice to have. I don't. Both of these things, I can't see myself using.
What, you don't clean up your SSMs?
I think that's the problem.
I don't clean up my secrets, no, because I only ever have secrets set in my fallback. And why would I ever clean up my fallback?
Yeah. It's like, why stop using SST? But that's you're on your own. Okay. It's real quick, since we talked about like secrets, when you remove the construct, it doesn't clear it out. Should it be a construct? Config.secret?
Oh, sorry, say that again.
Since secret doesn't really behave like a resource where you clean up the CloudFormation resource, it doesn't really even create any CloudFormation resource. Should it be a construct?
What would be the alternative?
When you create, you just do right. So you don't pass in the scope or anything. It's just plain text. It looks weird. I mean, that probably won't even be new. I don't know.
I love not having to pass in stack, but
I don't mind it. Yeah.
I like really hate having to pass in stack, especially with functional stacks. It's like I'm never making. So few people are making nested constructs. It definitely feels like it should be an optional thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
nothing
yeah.
follows that yet, so it might be weird.
All right, let me throw this out there. So if we're going down this line of thinking, right? So this thing is not a construct. What's actually doing is like allowing you to reference something that is set externally through the CLI or through the console or whatever. Then if you think about this, obviously new doesn't make sense because you're actually you're not creating anything.
But I think it is a construct in the parameter case.
Yeah, parameter has to be a construct.
I don't mind the new. I just don't. It just feels dumb. You have to pass in stack every single place.
Wait, really quickly, why is the parameter a construct again?
It's creating an SSM construct.
Right.
Maybe for now.
Yeah. Wait. Actually, what if like these two lines of code, the first one didn't have new and the second one actually had new? It was basically like signaling to me that like one of them is being created, the other one is not.
I feel like that's leaking implementation detail. I feel like you're still just creating new constructs in both these cases because of a quirk with how AWS and encrypted values work. We don't actually do anything in the first case. But hypothetically, like let's say one day we decide to have a CloudFormation resource that cleans up.
I see.
The secret when you remove the stack.
Yeah, it's funny because like I was going to argue in the direction of like we should, document this as a thing that is sort of separate and it's not a quirk, it's by design. but I can see the fact that like later on it might not be.
I interpreted this as like, let's just remove stack for both of them and then just figure out the stack behind the scenes.
Yeah, on that part though, I don't know if there's anything specific to this feature. I just feel like the stack removal thing we should probably try and do across the board.
Yeah, as I was gonna say, I feel like for now everything should just take stack, even if it uses it or not.
Yeah.
And then, I keep imagining how I would have designed CDK if it was from scratch, and I think this is one of those things. I think I would like infer the current scope instead of making you pass it in, or at least making the scope optional. Because sometimes you do create something from one stack in the scope of another stack, which I don't even know if that's good and if that should be allowed. But yeah, for the most part, it's just like feels kind of useless. You just pass it in stack for every single thing.
Okay, let's do this. I have one last question. I really need to get it over and then catch the screen. For us to figure out restarting the function, what function to restart when you update the secret value, that we need app level state, right? There's no easy way to figure out all the functions that are currently using the secret.
So to start though, this would happen as part of the CLI command.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this would just be. I would say we don't implement this until we move the metadata file to S3.
That's why I feel like we might need to do that before we ship this, right?
Do you think that's we need that? We definitely need that feature to launch this.
I mean, otherwise you could have like a Lambda function that stuck on the old, you know.
Yeah, because that what I do right now is I like go and manually update. I like add like a dummy environment variable to force it. Yeah, it's not great. I mean, I think moving the metadata file to S3 like opens up a ton of it unblocks like a ton of things. So I don't know how hard that is. Like right now, we're really conservative about what we put in the metadata because there's like a limit or it takes up space in your CloudFormation template. If that was removed, then like we can more or less just snapshot the entire state of your, or what we perceive to be the entire state of your system. And I think that unlocks a lot of stuff. Like even some of those, like listing all the secrets, like that becomes a lot faster. There's something else last week we were talking about also related to this. Yeah. Do you think that's a lot of effort, Frank?
Yeah, I don't think it is. It would be. Oh no, I think there are things that we need to consider.
Like that, we need to create a bootstrap stack.
We need to create per app properly, but not
per app.
account.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, last week we were talking about all the edge function, all the other things, right? It'd be easier to handle. But it cannot be this one big file that encapsulate all the state for all the stack.
It's one per stack.
Yeah, it has to be one per stack.
That'll still be fast because you can do a prefix scan in S3 and get all of get them all in one round trip. Or yeah, you can get them all in one round trip, right?
I was listing out the things we try to achieve with app state.
Oh, nice.
Speed up the console, right? This will speed it up. Be able to list. It won't be the list, but it would be able to. Let's just keep it there. Like list all the secrets, right? Be fast. This is tricky. Know when to remove stacks, right? There's this issue where when people rename a stack, they're pretty much orphaning a stack that would forever get lost.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if this can solve that because there's this pattern. What if people want
to keep it around?
Yeah, commenting stuff out and keep it around. Maybe we could add a flag or something. Yeah. I don't think this is that important, right? So, and if people just do SST deploy and pass in a single stack, what should we do? I think we should just update the stack for that stack file in S3. I guess only tricky thing is this won't be atomic action where, for CloudFormation, after it deploys, all the construct metadata are kind of resolved. But it's there in CloudFormation, right? But for this, it could be the stack deployed successfully, but the stack failed to sync. That could be.
But the what failed to sync? Like the state didn't make it to S3?
Yeah.
But can't we just deploy a resource per stack that is part of the CloudFormation thing? Because you can do it at bucket deployment construct, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah.
Then the stack is in charge of computing its own metadata, and that would be an asset. Oh, but that won't have the values resolved.
Yeah, it cannot be a build times thing, right? It will be.
Yeah.
I think pretty much everything that we're stuffing in the construct metadata need to go get stuff in the custom resource.
And custom resource, yeah.
Was JSON encode dump into a file, upload it.
But then if that fails, the stack will fail to deploy, right?
Yeah. That sounds pretty easy. Yeah. I think it might be easy to implement. Ish.
We should do a behind the scenes video after we roll that out.
Oh my god. Auth is waiting for config. Config is waiting for this.
Auth isn't waiting for config. I'm going to release it. I'm going to tell everyone don't use this in production because I've hard coded the JWT token.
Okay. I think that. Okay, app state. I think. So I think, but we shouldn't stop on secret and work on app state. I think I will wrap up secret or config. Just leave out restarting functions, and then we'll make a call. Do we want to release it or do we want to work on the app state first? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, somehow 2 hours is our magic number. It doesn't matter what you do when you start. It's a 2-hour stream.
Maybe,
Yeah.
Hey, we still have 9 more minutes.
Yeah.
I still have something.
Oh,
But-
no.
There you go.
No, but that's just for you guys to think about. I just
Okay.
thought when working on parameters, it made me think, hey, the parameter it solves this other problem where parameters really we're caching, we're passing the data through environments. We use parameters, right? But we're also saving a copy in SSM. So if the environment variable doesn't reference auth.userpool ID, it references the SSM, then we are breaking the stack dependency.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about this. Can I initialize a parameter without a value?
Right now, no, but yeah.
So if I need to pass in the front end URL to my API, the way I'm doing that right now is I'm initializing the parameter twice. I'm initializing it once to pass it into the API without a value, then I'm initializing it again with the value and setting it in the front end stack.
Why do you do it twice?
It's a hack. I don't know if it's I don't think it's because like it just coincidentally works, because if let's say you're allowed to wait, what happens if you initialize it twice with the same name and you set different values both times?
Right now, I don't allow you to initialize something with the same name.
Oh, it checks and it throws an error.
Yeah.
So I want this is a circular dependency thing. How do I give my front end access to the back end URL, and how do I give access to my back end to the front end URL?
Right.
And I was using this thing where I would just pass in the parameter before it was created, basically, to the API. Then I would create it later, and then at runtime, it's like it'll resolve itself.
No, but that's if. But when you do parameters through SSM, right? It's not through direct reference, right? Yeah.
So can I do that now with this setup? Like I can't just pass a string to the config field in functions, right? The function.config field, I can't just pass a string.
No.
Will you let me pass a string?
Yeah, I mean we said we were going to handle these. Yeah, I remember you mentioning this, where we do let you.
There was that GitHub issue recently that you responded to, right, Frank? Sort of similar.
Yeah. yeah, kind of pretty much from the GitHub issue, I just summarize all the cross-tag or referencing thing. Maybe today is too late. We can go over it the other time, but I just thought it was relevant to parameter. But this DAX question, yeah, I think DAX would need this. Right?
I can hear you. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah. Right.
I just hacking to go, but yeah. Wait, this won't even work because the parameter I'm doing it's the it doesn't use SSM, right? It still uses environment, so it wouldn't work in our case.
Oh, I thought it uses SSM.
No, we also set this environment because we were saying a Lambda function could have could use
it's more efficient to do it as an environment.
Yeah. I think what you're doing is technically doable through the lazy thing. So like you don't really need SSM to get it to work.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. I just don't know how to use the lazy thing yet, so that's probably why.
Yeah. All right. Aim to jump, but we can go over the variable reference in different cases together.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. See you guys on the next stream.
See everybody.
Yeah. See you guys.